Imagine this, a war that ends before your coffee gets cold, an entire army losing to birds, and a man the sky tried to delete 7 separate times. Now normally your brain would hear that and go, yeah, that's fake, that's a movie, that's bad writing. But here's the problem. Every single one of those things actually happened because reality doesn't care about logic. It doesn't care about storytelling, and it definitely doesn't care about what sounds believable. Sometimes it just throws chaos at the wall, and history writes it down like everything's fine. So today, we're diving into 5 real events that sound completely made up, but aren't. Let's get weird. In 1896, 2 countries went to war. It was violent, it was chaotic, and it was over before most people finished breakfast. This was the Anglo-Zanzibar War, officially the shortest war in recorded history. Total duration, 38 to 45 minutes, depending on who was watching the clock. Here's what happened. After the death of Zanzibar's pro-British ruler, a new sultan took power. Without British approval, the British Empire issued an ultimatum: step down by 9 a.m. or face military action. The deadline passed. The sultan refused. At 9:02 a.m., British warships opened fire on the palace. Cannons destroyed the building within minutes. Zanzibar's navy was sunk almost immediately. By 9:40 a.m., the palace was in ruins. The sultan had fled, and over 500 defenders were dead or wounded. British casualties? 1 sailor, mildly injured. The entire conflict lasted less time than a pizza delivery. Imagine declaring war, mobilizing troops, and losing so fast historians have to argue whether it even counts. Military experts still cite it as the ultimate example of why preparation matters. History calls it a war. Reality calls it a speed run. This one sounds like satire. It is not. In 1932, Australia declared war on emus. Yes, the birds. After World War I, thousands of emus migrated into farmland, destroying crops. Farmers were desperate, so the government sent in soldiers, armed with machine guns. The plan was simple: scare or kill the birds. Instead, the emus proved faster, smarter, and weirdly organized. They scattered at the sound of gunfire. They zigzagged unpredictably. Some reportedly took bullets and kept running, as if fueled purely by spite. One soldier later said the emus seemed to have a command structure, which is terrifying because that implies meetings. Machine guns jammed, ammo was wasted, weeks passed with almost no results. Eventually, the military withdrew. The emus remained. No medals were awarded, no victory parades were held. The government quietly ended the operation and stopped talking about it. To this day, the Emu War remains one of history's most humiliating losses. Never underestimate an animal that looks like it hasn't slept since the Cretaceous period. Getting struck by lightning once is already a statistical nightmare. Getting struck twice is nearly impossible. Getting struck 7 times means the universe has a personal problem with you. Meet Roy Sullivan, a park ranger in Virginia. Between 1942 and 1977, Roy was struck by lightning 7 separate times and survived every single one. Each strike left injuries: burned hair, lost toenails, permanent scars. One bolt traveled through his headset, down his body, and out his foot, setting his shoe on fire. After a while, people avoided him. Friends refused to stand near him during storms. Some genuinely believed he was cursed. He earned a Guinness World Record, possibly the least comforting one ever. Ironically, Roy didn't die from lightning. He lived for years afterward and died from unrelated causes. Statistically speaking, you are more likely to win the lottery multiple times in a row. Roy Sullivan didn't beat the odds. He offended them. In 1896, a woman named Virginia McDonald fell seriously ill. Doctors examined her. She was declared dead. A death certificate was issued. A funeral was scheduled, but during the viewing, mourners noticed movement. Virginia wasn't dead. She was very much alive. She had been in a deep coma, misdiagnosed in an era without modern medical equipment. When she woke up inside her coffin, Chaos followed. Some people reportedly ran out of the room entirely, convinced they had just witnessed something supernatural. Because think about it, 1 second you're grieving, the next, the person you're mourning is blinking at you like, why is everyone crying? And there was no smooth recovery from that moment, no polite transition back to reality, no let's all calm down, just pure confusion, panic, and a woman who had to process the fact that she had already been officially dead for a few hours. Which raises a very uncomfortable question. At what point do you go from tragic loss to awkward misunderstanding? People screamed, some fainted, the priest reportedly dropped everything and ran. Virginia recovered and lived for decades afterward, which means she experienced something incredibly rare, attending her own funeral and surviving the reviews. Imagine the existential whiplash of waking up from the dead and still having to go back to normal life. In 1987, residents of Goiânia, Brazil, noticed something was wrong. People were getting sick, animals were dying, metal objects glowed faintly blue at night. 2 men had broken into an abandoned hospital and stolen a medical radiation device containing cesium-137. They didn't know what it was. They thought it was valuable. The glowing powder was shared with friends, kids played with it, some even described it as beautiful. The powder glowed softly in the dark, like something out of a sci-fi movie, so people kept it, shared it, touched it. Because if something looks magical, your first instinct usually isn't, this might destroy my DNA. One man reportedly carried it around in his pocket like a lucky charm. Others spread it on their skin, which is probably the worst skincare routine in human history, all because something dangerous looked harmless. By the time authorities realized what was happening, hundreds were contaminated. Several people died. Entire neighborhoods were demolished and buried. It remains one of the worst radiological disasters in history, caused not by war, but curiosity. Sometimes reality isn't just fake sounding, it's terrifying. So yeah, if you ever feel like reality makes sense, just remember, history includes speedrun wars, military defeats by birds, and people accidentally turning themselves into glow sticks. Which makes you wonder, what are we doing right now that future generations will look at and go, yeah, that was a terrible idea. Talking to machines like they're people, recording ourselves crying for views, letting apps track our sleep, and then ruining it anyway? So if you enjoyed this episode, hit that like button, subscribe, and send this to someone who still says, that would never happen in real life. Because clearly, it does. Next time on Weird But Real, did a man survive being swallowed by a whale? Is there a place where it literally rains animals? Has anyone ever been declared legally dead twice? Honestly, we have no idea. But if we did, we'd tell you. Probably. Class dismissed.